I am honestly shocked by the boldness of Jesus in our gospel reading today. What he and his group of 12 disciples are doing in the temple reminds me of that year in 2011 when a ragtag group of activists launched a protest action in Manhattan, in New York, and they called it Occupy Wall Street. It was meant as a protest against social and economic inequality, the greed and corruption, and the undue influence of the Wall Street-based transnational corporations on the American government. Well, Jesus is doing something like this in today's gospel. He was calling attention to the corporate greed, ang kasakiman ng mga Sadduseo, the greed of the Sadducees, the priestly class that was in control of the temple institution. You see, these Sadducees, at the guise of protecting kuno the temple from being defiled by the Gentiles whom they regarded as unclean, you know what they did? They transformed the outer part of the temple, which was called the Gentile court, into a place for the buying and selling of animals for sacrifice and for money changing. Ewan ko lang how you are going to react if I rent out the whole patio into a palengke. All these business entities around the temple enjoyed the protection of the ruling priestly authorities, which in turn enjoyed the protection of the Roman colonial government. They turned the temple sacrifices into a lucrative business. They had allowed only the animals that were certified clean by them to be sold to the devotees according to their social status. Baka para sa mayayaman, tupat, kambing para sa middle class, at kalapate o bato-bato para sa mga dukha. They had managed to turn an act of worship into a very corrupt activity that was both oppressive and exploitative of the poor. Actually, kailangan mong balikan ang chapter 7 of the book of Jeremiah to understand what Jesus is doing in this passage, which has been called the cleansing of the temple. And you also have to bear in mind that the prophets did not always preach with words. Sometimes they performed symbolic actions in order to make a statement or to drive home a point. Like what Jesus was doing when he turned the tables of the money changers, when he drove away the buyers and sellers with a whip. Parang we're not familiar with that image of Jesus. Nagwala talaga. And when he cursed the fruitless fig tree, what was he trying to say? He was making a prophecy that is actually expressed more explicitly in the Gospel of St. John. Destroy this temple, and I will build it up again in 3 days. His prophecy will be fulfilled around 40 years later when the Romans destroyed Jerusalem in the year 70 AD. Like I said, you have to return to Jeremiah to understand what Jesus is doing. Jeremiah had also made the same prophetic statement a few years before the first temple was destroyed by the Babylonians in the year 586 BC. Let me paraphrase that famous speech that was made by the prophet Jeremiah 6 centuries before the time of Jesus. Sabi ng propeta, "You call this temple my house? And you expect me to stay in this house in order to listen to your prayers? You expect me to protect you and allow you to continue to dwell in your land? I tell you, I will stay with you only if you resolve to change your corrupt ways. If you learn to treat your neighbors with justice and compassion, if you stop oppressing the strangers, the widows, and the orphans, if you stop murdering people, innocent people, if you stop dishonoring my name, how can you worship me and be involved in killing, stealing, lying, and the worship of false gods at the same time? How can you stand without shame before my presence in this holy house?" Wow! Such fiery words from Jeremiah. And then he ends with the words that were quoted by Jesus. "Has this house, which is meant to honor my name, become in your eyes a den of thieves?" Isang pugad ng mga magnanakaw. For Jesus, Jerusalem had become like a fruitless fig tree that was about to wither and die. It did not die because it was cursed. It died because it had become fruitless. In Luke chapter 19, verses 42 to 44, we are told by St. Luke that Jesus wept for Jerusalem. At alam niyo bang ibig sabihin ng word Jerusalem? It's Hebrew, Yerushalayim. Ibig sabihin, ang syudad ng kapayapaan, the city of peace. Isn't that ironic? Kung merong isang syudad na hindi nakakaranas ng kapayapaan, it's Jerusalem. The prophecy will make your hair stand because it will make you think of modern-day Israel. Sabi ni Jesus, "If this day you only knew what makes for peace, but now it is hidden from your eyes. For the days are coming upon you when you will be destroyed because you did not recognize your time of visitation." Kung merong isang dahilan kung bakit napako sa krus si Jesus, it was this event when he occupied Jerusalem. I mean, the temple. Mark tells us, after the symbolic action, Jesus imparted a teaching about faith and prayer. I wonder if he already had in mind what would happen to the Jewish people 2,000 years later. The people who, after being oppressed, after being slaughtered like lambs by Hitler, they would rise again in power and start doing exactly what their oppressors had done to them. I wonder if Jesus had not meant his final words in the gospel today for them. When you stand to pray, forgive. Forgive those against whom you have a grievance, so that your heavenly Father may in turn forgive you your transgressions. Maybe only then can Jerusalem truly become a city of peace.